Even if we are lucky enough to avoid a physical carnage, America's enemies are doing everything they can to interfere in our government and our election. The Chinese Communist Party is first among those. Their puppet in the White House, Joe Biden, can't be trusted to stop anything the Chinese attempt. He is compromised. So what can we expect from China in its attempt to subvert our elections later this year? Joining me now to react is Peter Schweizer. He's the author of Blood Money: Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. Thank you, Peter, for joining us.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks so much for having me.
You've written many books. I've read many of them. We have Caught Red-Handed, Profiles in Corruption, Secret Empires. Some of the same players in your books. There's a theme there. Tell us a little bit about Blood Money.
Yeah, Blood Money essentially looks at what the Chinese Communist Party is doing towards the United States, and it is what they call disintegration warfare. The idea is basically that they want to defeat the United States without actually having to fight us. And they're using a series of strategies that rely on their internal control and ability to steer events in the United States using their allies and using their partners. And part of the strategy rests on what they call elite capture, the notion that they have elites in the United States that are beholden to them economically and financially, so they are not going to confront or raise alarm bells about what China is doing. And I would say the strategy is working very well. It's resulting in the deaths of Americans. It's resulting in social chaos and division. And I think there is more to come. And unfortunately, many in our political class are not doing anything to deal with this.
Yeah, it's almost like they could say it, or we the people bring out an issue, we ask for accountability, but nothing happens. There's no ethics committee, there's nobody looking at corruption. I mean, look at Joe Biden, he's protected. He took, how much, 30 million from the Chinese Communist Party? How did he even get a security clearance?
Yeah, no, his family has received a lot of money from Chinese businessmen. As I point out in Blood Money, I think it explains in part why he will not confront China on the fentanyl scourge. Fentanyl is now the leading cause of death for people in the United States under the age of 45. More people die from this than from auto accidents. And this is something that, while people focus on the Mexican drug cartels, it's really a Chinese-run operation from head to tail. They are the senior partners, and the drug cartels are the junior partners, and I lay that out in the book. The problem is that Joe Biden has made clear he is not going to confront them on this. He said he's asked President Xi about it, but there will be no finger pointing. And the challenge is a financial one. In 2017, the Biden family received a $5 million interest-free forgivable loan that they never paid back from a Chinese businessman. That businessman happened to be business partners with a Chinese gangster named White Wolf. White Wolf is the head of a criminal gang called UBG that set up the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico in the fentanyl trade and made them the kings of fentanyl. So you literally have 1 degree of separation between the Biden family and the fentanyl trade. So Joe Biden does not want to have this conversation. He does not want to draw attention to it, because by doing so, this would become part of the central national conversation, and he doesn't want that kind of scrutiny. So he just simply allows Americans to die and will not confront China on it.
Peter, it seems like China is neck and neck in our political party, especially the Democrat radical left political party. How do you think they'll influence an election?
Well, they work very hard to influence elections, and you are quite right. There is this sort of tacit alliance between people on the political left, the Democratic Socialists of America, for example, that includes people like AOC and even Bernie Sanders. And there is cooperation. The CCP likes the DSA as a vehicle, as a tool to advance their interests in the United States, and I quote them as saying such. But there are also Republicans, so what you might call Chamber of Commerce Republicans, who are very much tied up with the business community, especially large corporations. And they are some of the biggest lobbyists for China. Why? Because they will be seeing their access to the Chinese market disappear if they're not prepared to do the bidding for the CCP. So when Donald Trump, for example, imposed tariffs on China when he was president, China did not go to the White House to complain. They went to Wall Street and Silicon Valley, and those industries went to the White House to lobby to get those tariffs removed. So this is a problem on both sides of the aisle. For the left, it's sort of ideological, their attachment or their embrace of aspects of the CCP's governance model. But you also have sort of tag-alongs on the Republican side who are beholden to big corporations who desperately want access to the Chinese market, and they are prepared to do the bidding of China in order to keep that access.
If we were a perfectly run government and we all did our jobs, what branch would be overseeing this and stopping this influence? Is it the Department of Justice?
It's a great question. Yes, Department of Justice is absolutely central to this. But you also have the State Department and the Pentagon to deal with very specific national security issues. Because, look, this is, in the context of the way China views it, a war. That war includes things like bringing fentanyl into the United States. It also includes smuggling, since 2018, these small devices called auto sear switches or Glock switches. These are highly illegal in the United States. If you insert this switch into a Glock handgun, it turns a Glock handgun into a fully automatic machine gun. And China has been smuggling these into the United States to sell to criminal gangs and drug dealers. And it's sowing chaos on America's streets. The Department of Justice has not been pursuing this aggressively. They seem more focused on trying to restrict the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans, when instead they should be directly aiming their fire, so to speak, on China for their meddling and their efforts to destabilize America socially.
I hadn't heard that before. I always learn so much from you. How can we get your book?
Well, fortunately, the book's been #1 on the New York Times bestseller list now for 2 weeks. It's available anywhere, Amazon, Costco, Barnes & Noble. You can read it and give feedback at my website, peterschweizer.com. I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts on the book.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Maria.